Welcome to a deep dive, you guys, into a story that's ancient, yeah, but like surprisingly relevant even today. We're diving into, like, the book of Genesis, chapter 28, the story of Jacob's ladder. You know that one? The dream? Yeah, it's captivated people, like, forever.
It's a classic.
Totally.
Yeah.
And the source material we're looking at, MCS Genesis chapter 28, it really gets into the nitty-gritty. You know, I think we're going to uncover some really fascinating stuff about, like, sacred spaces, how we access God, that kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely.
So, okay, picture this. Jacob. He's on the run, just had this huge blow up with Esau, his twin brother.
Right.
And he's alone, vulnerable,
Yeah.
spending his first night away from literally everything he's ever known.
And that detail about the location, that's actually really important.
Oh, yeah.
He's in Canaan, and that land. Huge historical and theological significance. This isn't just some random campsite. It's tied to, like, the core promises God made to Abraham, Jacob's grandfather. And those promises, they echoed down like generations.
Wow. So those listening back then would have been, like, on the edge of their seats.
Exactly. They'd feel the weight of that history, all those expectations.
Like, the land itself is part of the story unfolding.
Totally.
Speaking of details, the source mentions how Jacob, he arranges these stones to sleep on. Not just one, multiple stones. Why he's so specific?
Yeah, it's interesting.
Feels like he's, like, creating a space, marking a moment.
Right. Very deliberate.
And this is where it gets really wild. Jacob falls asleep, and bam, he's got this dream. But not just any dream. We're talking a massive staircase, or column in Hebrew, connecting earth and heaven.
Uh-huh.
And get this, angels going up and down, like a celestial highway, like rush hour or something.
Right.
Now, I got to say, when I hear angel, I'm picturing like those cute little cherubs with wings.
Yeah, classic image.
But here they're messengers, go-betweens. How does that change things, you know?
It shows us that even way back then, the divine, it wasn't seen as totally untouchable. God wasn't off doing his own thing. He was active in the world, communicating, interacting through these messengers, the angels.
So even back then, they believed God was accessible.
Exactly. He was involved.
And like at the top of this huge staircase, God, he shows up, right?
Yeah.
And we know, like, those divine appearances, huge deal. Not just a pop in for tea.
Yeah, big moment.
It's like major announcement time. So what's the message for Jacob here?
It's a confirmation, a big one. All those promises to his ancestors, they're still in play. God reaffirms it, the land of Canaan, for Jacob, for his descendants. But it goes even further, way further.
Okay, how so?
We're talking descendants like stars in the sky, expansion everywhere, and get this, a blessing, a worldwide blessing for all families on earth.
Whoa. So it's not just like a personal promise anymore.
Not at all.
This is huge global scale stuff.
Exactly.
It makes you wonder, like, what does that even mean, you know? A global blessing, both back then and, like, now in our world.
Yeah, that's a question people have been trying to figure out for centuries. The source we're looking at, it links it to a Jew named Jesus, saying that through him, that promise, it hits its peak, fulfillment. But regardless, whether that's your belief or not, the scope of this promise, it's mind-blowing. It really gets you thinking about how much impact one person can have across generations, even across cultures.
Totally. So much to unpack there. But before we, like, dive into all the theology, let's rewind back to Jacob. He's waking up from this dream, this crazy encounter. What's his reaction?
Total awe and terror, honestly.
Understandable.
Right. I mean, given the situation. And he says, listen to this. Truly, Adonai is in this place, and I didn't know it. This place is fearsome. This has to be the house of God. This is the gate of heaven.
Wow.
Strong reaction.
It is. And it's kind of funny, because we just talked about the staircase, how it connected heaven and earth, like everywhere, not just in that spot.
Right.
Yet Jacob's stuck on the location, as if God's presence is, like, limited to that one place.
It's very human, isn't it?
Yeah.
To want to mark the spot, to create something physical, to remember this huge spiritual thing that just happened. The source even compares it to how we, like, instinctively associate God with certain buildings, temples, churches.
So are we maybe, like, limiting how we understand God's presence by doing that? By focusing on specific locations?
It's possible.
Because if that staircase really does mean we have access to the divine all the time, shouldn't that, like, change how we see the entire world around us?
It's a big question, yeah. It gets to the core of what this dream could be telling us. If God is everywhere, then how we live our lives, how we treat people, how we see the divine in the normal everyday stuff.
Yeah.
It all changes, doesn't it?
It's wild, right? Like Jacob, even after this huge vision, this connection between heaven and earth, he still goes back to like a much smaller, more, grounded understanding of God.
We do that, don't we? Cling to what we know, what we can touch, even when something much bigger, much more expansive is right there. It's like that urge to make sacred places. It comes from wanting to make the intangible, tangible,
To like prove it happened.
Yeah, to have something physical, real, to remind us of something spiritual.
But then wouldn't that mean the real point of Jacob's Ladder isn't about pinning God down to one place?
Maybe, yeah.
What if it's about recognizing that potential for, like, connection, but everywhere? What if that staircase, it's actually about something inside us, something that lets us access, the divine, no matter where we are?
And that idea that the divine's inside us, it pops up everywhere across so many traditions, spiritual, philosophical, you name it. Like, maybe we don't have to search for signs out there, build these monuments. Yeah. Maybe the real journey, it's inward. Recognizing that we already have this capacity for awe, for wonder, for connection within us.
So not building altars out of stone, but recognizing the column.
Right.
That's already present in our lives, the people we connect with, moments of beauty, those quiet times when you tap into something bigger.
Those are the real gates of heaven, you could say. And that's hopeful, isn't it? Empowering, even.
It is.
That the divine, it's not off limits. It's not just for a select few. It's accessible to everyone, anytime, anywhere, if we just open ourselves to the experience.
This deep dive has really got me thinking. It's incredible how these stories from, thousands of years ago, they still resonate, still make us ask these big questions. So tell me, where do you find those staircases to the divine in your life? What experiences, what relationships help you tap into that awe, that connection? Think about it. Keep exploring. This has been your deep dive into Jacob's Ladder and the promise of access.